This presentation will be in a remote presentation, which will be presented by Dr. Famio Natasuhara from Kerala and Dr. Lin May from the Queensland University of Technology in Australia, and Dr. Famio is from the University of Bedfordshire in UK. So they will present us the theme of eliciting pragmatic and interactional competence in semi-direct speaking test. So I remind again that this presentation will be in parallel between our two speakers. We thank them a lot, by the saying goes. I don't know if they are ready. For example, if they can say some word in order to ensure us that they are all ready. Yeah. Thank you very much, and welcome again. We thank you a lot for this speech you will give us. So I let you the floor. Thank you.
Thanks. We are very honored to be part of this conference, sharing our research and thoughts with you all, and thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
How can I move my slide? Okay. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge that this project we are going to present now is funded by the British Council, and also a project has got 4 other members, Chihiro, Inoue, and Edith, Caroline, and Richard. So thanks to them as well. And our full report is also available online if you are interested later. So, what motivated us to embark on this project is the well-known difficulty in operationalizing communicative construct in computer-delivered speaking tests, and the lack of authenticity in communicatively oriented tasks delivered via computer. I have some quotes here, but since these observations were made like 4 years ago, and since then, the field has moved on considerably. Okay. Oops, sorry. Yeah. In particular, the state of the art of the spoken dialogue systems a few years ago is completely different from what it is now. And if you're interested, we highly recommend watching these videos. The first one here, I hope you can see where I'm pointing, is the new speaking test developed by Waseda University, Japan. And this second one here is on the new language model GPT-3, generating responses not only relevant to the previous utterance locally, but also to some extent in light of the flow of the conversation so far with some global relevance. And then, of course, VR and AR would be very good ways to enhance the authenticity of test tasks. And we have also seen very a fantastic presentation from Dominic this morning as well. Yeah. But having said that, not everyone can afford to invest in such systems or have resources, although they may still wish to benefit from computer-delivered tests, which is usually practical and more convenient than traditional face-to-face speaking test. So our aim was to explore how we could possibly expand the construct that we can assess in computer-delivered semi-direct speaking tests by carefully designing test tasks. Okay. Here are our questions, research questions. Number 1, can a computer-based semi-direct speaking test elicit features of pragmatic competence at different levels? Number 2, can a computer-based semi-direct speaking test elicit features of interactional competence at different levels? Yeah. And methods. This is the overall research design of our project. We first developed test specifications for pragmatic competence and international competence task. We are calling the PC and IC, so you will hear those acronyms in our talk, and created 2 PC and 2 IC tasks accordingly. We then recruited 48 candidates in China and Austria whose proficiency ranged from B1 to C. We didn't differentiate B1 and C1 and C2. They firstly took a benchmarking task, which was UpTest task 4, followed by 2 PC tasks and 2 IC tasks in the counterbalanced order. All performances were audio recorded. The test takers then completed a feedback questionnaire about their test-taking experience, and 12 of them were interviewed to give further insights. Yeah. And in order to develop our tasks, we had some guiding principles. To enhance authenticity of the task, we consider the use of visuals and videos were very important, so we made sure to include them. And for the IC tasks, we wanted to include a generic clarification request after the first part of the test taker response. For the PC tasks, we carefully planned power relationships between speaker and hearer in the 2 tasks, and we made sure that all language included in the task instructions and prompts were standardized and accessible to the test takers. For that purpose, we explicitly used English vocabulary profile and English grammar profile. For our target learners, which were actually B2, we made sure that all written prompts and an audio prompts were at B1 or below. Okay. The thing we also like to note here is that we didn't mean to develop listening into speaking tasks, so we didn't want to hinder the demonstration of test takers' PC and IC skills due to a lack of understanding of listening input. So we provided some written text for scaffolding purposes, and we piloted our tasks prior to the main test. And to design the tasks, we used socio-cognitive pro forma to build our detailed test specifications. Okay, we now want to show you the actual tasks, but before that, let me show you the specifications a bit. So we specified all parameters in using specification, socio-cognitive specification pro forma. And let me enlarge this part, okay? Skills focus. What we wanted to focus in the PC task was to measure candidates' pragmatic competence in making requests with relatively high level of imposition. And the task targeted the candidate's ability to structure coherent sequence, including logical pre-expansion features such as projecting the upcoming request, etc., to achieve the communicative goal of requesting, okay? And also the ability to connect different pre-expansion features appropriately and to deliver the intended meanings while being sensitive to the social and power relationship between interlocutors, imposition, and showing awareness of those contextual factors by using language for mitigation. And lastly, to use a wide range of pragmalinguistic devices appropriately. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the first task, the PC task we developed. Hope you will enjoy it.
In this part, you will be given a situation to make a request appropriately. After a situation is explained, you will have 60 seconds to prepare your talk. You will then have 60 seconds to speak. You were selected for the school basketball team and played your first game last week. You've practiced hard to prepare, but on the day of the game you had a bad headache. You didn't tell anyone because you didn't want to let the team down. As a result, you didn't play well, and the coach has now dropped you from the team. You decide to ask your coach, Mr. Swift, to give you another chance, but you know that this might be unfair to other teammates. You knock on Mr. Swift's office door and you're asked to enter. He says,
"Hello, how can I help you?"
"Please ask Mr. Swift to consider putting you back in the team. Remember to explain your situation and consider Mr. Swift's situation." You have 60 seconds to prepare your answer and 60 seconds to speak. Please start to prepare your answer after the beep.
Okay, so this was our PC task, and now I'd like to show you our IC task. So we did the same, we use the same specification pro forma and specified all the contextual parameters that we wanted to set. And here are skills focus. So we designed a task to tap into 4 specific features: responding to a partner, negotiating towards a joint outcome, interactive listening, negotiating meaning, and more specifically, ability to disagree and put forward a different point of view effectively and provide justification, and effectively link their own contribution to the partners, work towards decision by trying to persuade the partner, acknowledge partner's view, demonstrate that they have been listening carefully and attentively, and lastly, to be able to clarify and rephrase their points. So there are a lot of things. Let's see how we've operationalized these constructs. Okay.
In this part, you will watch the video of your classmate Jan, who will argue for the use of group presentations. Jan will make 2 points in her talk. After you watch Jan's talk, you will be given the 2 points that you are going to make. You will have 60 seconds to prepare your argument and 75 seconds to speak. Please talk to Jan in a way that shows that you understand Jan's points, and use the 2 points to try to persuade Jan to change her opinion. After you have finished speaking, you will hear a question from Jan. You will be given 30 seconds to answer the question. In a classroom, Jan starts talking to you.
Have you heard? We can now vote on whether to do a group or individual presentation next term. I'm definitely going to vote for doing a group presentation, and I hope you will too. I think group presentations are really great, and they are so much better than individual presentations. In my experience, working together with friends develops our teamwork skills. You know, I'm so pleased that I learned how to become a good team member during the last group project, and it was wonderful that we all worked hard for the team. And I also believe that working in groups is more similar to our real-life activities in the future. When we start working, we'll need to work together with our colleagues. So, to me, it makes more sense to start doing group presentations now to practice what we'll be doing in the future. What do you think?
In your talk, use the 2 points on the screen to persuade Jan to change her opinion. The 2 points that you're going to make are: group presentations only work if all team members work hard, and it is probably unfair if all team members receive the same score. Key words from Jan's points are also provided. Remember to first show your understanding of her points. You now have 60 seconds to think about your answer to Jan.
Okay, so let's skip the preparation time.
You now have 75 seconds to talk to Jan, making 2 points to persuade her to change her opinion. Remember to show your understanding of her points. Please start speaking after the beep.
Okay, so we are skipping the speaking time as well.
Now Jan has a question for you. You have 30 seconds to answer after the beep.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that last point. Can you say that again? Perhaps using different words or using an example?
Yeah. So this was the second task. Let me go back to our original slides. Yeah, yes. So as you have seen, we actually used just Microsoft PowerPoint to develop this task. So I'm sure that you are really surprised how low tech it is. We just embedded audio and video files. So even if you don't have access to most recent or advanced technologies, actually we can achieve this just by using our laptop and then smartphone. So we just wanted to show an example of what we can achieve if we carefully design our test specifications and tasks. Yeah. And okay, so how did we analyze the data? We firstly asked 2 trained raters to score the benchmarking performances, and when there were some disagreements, we invited a 3rd rater to rate the performances, and all test takers were categorized into 3 levels: B1, B2, and C. All PC and IC recordings were transcribed and analyzed for interactional moves and for pragmalinguistic devices. So Lynn is going to talk a bit about that. And interactional moves were more like macro categories, such as acknowledging speaker's point of view or projecting upcoming disagreement. And pragmalinguistic devices are micro categories of lexical features, such as downtoner, upgrader, politeness markers, and so on. Survey responses were analyzed with descriptive statistics, and semi-structured interview recordings were transcribed and thematically analyzed, and we came up with 14 main categories. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Fumi. Okay, I'm just going to highlight some of the key findings. If you'd like to read more about this, our British Council validation report is freely available online. So I'm just going to highlight some key features that we found here. So in terms of the task that was designed to, or the 2 tasks actually, that were designed to elicit sort of features of pragmatic competence, I just want to draw your attention to the 3 kind of features which have the circle around them in this chart. So the first one there is PS, and PS is that the candidate was able to produce what we call a problem statement. So this problem statement entailed stating what the problem is and also why the request is being made. So this is a very important part of an effective request. Okay, and as we can see here, you see that B1 is here in yellow, the B1 mean, B2 mean is in blue, and the C mean is in green. So what we can see here is that the test takers at B1 level were far less likely to be able to produce this problem statement, whereas test takers at the B2 and C level, did this much more frequently. The next feature I just want to focus on here is the next one that's circled. And this feature is a face-related statement. So this is the kind of statement that is meant to perhaps elicit empathy, sympathy, or perhaps to save your own face in the interaction. So again, we can see that with this one, in fact, our B1 candidates, were less likely to be able to produce this than the B2 candidates, but this was much more frequently shown in the performances of the C-level candidates. Now, the third feature that I just want to draw your attention to on this chart is this one that you can see PUR, and this is projecting the upcoming request. So again, a very important part of the kind of mechanics, if you like, of being able to effectively, put a request forward, that you project that this is coming. And again, you could see that this was much more frequently done at the C level. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just briefly, we're going to show you a B1 sample performance from the PC task, and then we'll be looking at a C level performance. I've just highlighted some features to draw your attention to there, but what you'll see is that the actual transcript is on the left, and then the features that we coded are on the right in that column there. So what we can see here from this B1 sample performance, where this person is performing the task that Fumi's just shown you, which is trying to request that Mr. Smith put him or her back on the basketball team. And we can see here, yes, there's a greeting, but it's not hello, Mr. Smith, Swift rather, it's just hello. And we can see that this candidate goes straight into the main request. There's nothing that's kind of leading the listener up to understanding what's going to happen here. It's just a very abrupt sort of main request that happens there. So there's no preliminary moves. The request itself remains incomplete. So it's not very successful in any measure there. However, this candidate is able to begin to acknowledge the situation, and they can give an account and begin to elaborate on that. Okay. However, this sequence is unfinished, and as we can see with the transcription, many sort of pauses and sort of false starts in it as well. Okay. The next sample that we're going to be looking at is the C sample. So you can see immediately that this is a longer response, but it's also a response where the sort of architecture of talk is quite different in a sense. So what we've got here is a greeting that includes the interlocutor's name, so it personalizes it. There's a face-related statement that comes first. The request is projected, so you've got a very clear, projection of the upcoming request. You've got more face work, one might say. Okay, so more sort of empathy, sympathy building, getting you on my side sort of things happening there. There's then quite an elaborate account. So, why is the request being made? What's the problem here? And almost at the end of this, we actually come to the main request. Okay, which is then followed by acknowledging, the interlocutor's situation again. So there's a lot of sort of latticing, one might say, of face work and preparing the listener for that request there. Okay. All right, now I'll have a very brief look at the IC, the interactional competence findings. Again, I just want to draw your attention to a few features. So we coded many features, but we just want to highlight a few of these features here in this talk. So the first feature that's circled there is ED, which is explicit disagreement. So this is quite abrupt, I don't agree with you. So that's, and as you can see, that really only occurred at the B1 level. There was, very little of it that occurred at any other level. The next feature that's circled there is projecting upcoming disagreement. So again, in terms of coherence, cohesion, preparing your listener for the fact that you're going to be disagreeing with them. And actually, there were many instances of this, but we can see that it happened more frequently at the higher level. The next feature is sort of an intriguing one I want to draw your attention to, and you can see it's coded as APVC. So what this is actually a concurring concession. And what I mean by this is that the speaker appears to acknowledge and concur with sort of the interlocutor's point of view, but in fact this is simply preparing the ground for the disagreement. So it's quite a sophisticated move in terms of persuading, and we can see here that it occurred much more frequently at the C level. Okay, so all levels were doing it to some extent, but the C level, happening at the C level much more frequently. This isn't circled, but if you have a look at the three columns before that APVC, you can see that this is simply acknowledging a point of view. And, you know, all candidates were doing that pretty frequently. But it's the actually being able to sort of appear to concur that was happening more at the higher level. Okay, the other feature that I want to draw your attention to is agreeing. Now, the reason that we think that this is an important feature is because this is in relation to the final question. So remember that the candidate was asked, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't, something like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your last point. Could you please rephrase it or, you know, clarify it in some way? So this was sort of explicitly agreeing to that request, which we took to be evidence, you know, very limited evidence, but still evidence of interactive listening, as this was not put in front of the candidate. So again, you can see that this is more likely to occur at the B2 and C levels. So those were just some features that we wanted to draw your attention to, some findings as well. Okay, so let's have a look again at two samples, so two candidate performances. The first one's at the B1 level, and again you can see that the transcript, the performance is on the left, the features that were coded is on the column on the right. So I've just again highlighted some features of this performance for us to have a look at. And you can see that, yes, there's immediately in the second turn highlighted a very explicit disagreement. And that's what starts, you know, this performance off. I don't agree with you. There is the ability to acknowledge point of view. There is a projection of upcoming disagreement, a very basic one with a but you know, still it's there. And you can see that this candidate sort of follows. They follow the point one that's given, and then they follow the point two that's given there. They're able to elaborate on the second point, not the first one, but only the second point. And they don't actually give an explicit agreement to the request to rephrase or clarify what's been, what their second point was. They simply go straight into it with in fact. Okay. So we can see there that from that B1 sample that, you know, quite a few features of interactional competence are elicited through this task. But there's sort of very abrupt beginning and a limited range, I would say. Okay, so let's have a look at the C sample. So what we can see here is a very clear orientation towards the listener. So we thought that this was very interesting in the higher level performances. It did appear that the candidate was tailoring their speech towards a listener, even though this was, you know, a monologue in nature, and the listener is only there in the video. That was definitely a very, I think, very appealing finding, a very good finding for us there. And we can see that here immediately. You know, that's a really difficult situation you've got there, Dan. And appearing to concur, you know, I totally understand that you don't know what to do. So a lot of acknowledging of Dan's point of view there. And this one was about traveling solo. So you didn't get to see this one, but essentially, you know, Dan wants to travel solo and you're going to persuade him it's better to travel with friends. So, as I said, a lot of acknowledging and a lot of orienting to you. You know, it's your plans in that second turn. You can probably do that better when you're alone in the third turn. You can see that there's a projection of upcoming disagreement with however. And then, you know, elaborating points, weaving sort of effortlessly in counter views. And we can see, if we go down here, an actual invitation to Dan to change his opinion. So why not? you know, why not change your opinion? So it's really eliciting some quite interesting language, and language that we'd hoped to elicit there. And again, I've just highlighted, you know, when the orientation is towards you, you know, that you're actually kind of speaking to someone there. We can see towards the end there that there's an explicit agreement to clarify their final point. Yes, of course. And then again, orients straight to the interlocutor. You know that, and off they go. So I think we can say that the architecture of talk there is quite different. The way that that response has been organised, and the orientation towards the interlocutor is very clear there, as well as a much wider range of interactional functions. Okay, the other sort of source of data that we collected was we designed a survey, and we also interviewed, as Fermi mentioned earlier, quite a few students. So what really interested us and what we're really delighted with, I've highlighted in this chart here. So from the survey, I knew who I had to communicate with in these tasks, and almost 94% of candidates agreed that they did. So we really felt that, you know, that this was a strength of these tasks, because in the past, you know, trials that we've read from other sorts of semi-direct tests, there really wasn't that sort of, you know, feeling that you knew who you were actually speaking to. And we felt that this was related to the second point that I've highlighted there, which was to understand Jan and Dan's points. The video was helpful or very helpful. And again, almost 94% of candidates agreed with that. So we kind of tried to make it as authentic as possible within the confines of a very simply designed semi-direct speaking test. But we felt that feedback, you know, was very promising. And we've got a couple of quotes here from the interviews as well. So they've got one learner saying it was definitely better with videos. You can really see the visuals. It was just a bit more human and realistic. So that taps into one type of context, providing context, and also authenticity. And the second comment there from an interviewee was in relation to being asked about persuading. So this was related to the interactional competence task, and so we asked our candidates, does this, you know, do you actually do this in your real life? Does it happen often? And the candidate said, I think it happens at any time. It's quite common in our daily life. So again, that was very promising, that these, you know, these features of language are features that are not just used in the petri dish of a test, but they're actual, you know, features that are out there in the real world that our candidates are engaging with as learners, not candidates. Okay, back to you, Fumi.
Okay, so thanks, Ling, and then let's move on to the conclusion, very brief one. So just to summarize our findings, we have observed some good evidence of selected PC and IC features being elicited in our semi-direct speaking tasks, including a range of PC features for requesting and pre-expansion moves, and selected IC features such as acknowledging an interlocutor's view or clarifying, exemplifying points in order to resolve a communication breakdown. Yeah, and we were particularly happy that they knew who they were talking to, as evidenced by the way they spoke, they formulated and directed the utterance to the listener. Having said that, there's a caveat. We saw some variation in performances even within a level, so it will not be very easy to precisely identify the criteria features that will distinguish levels very clearly. But this is not the problem of the delivery mode, but this is inherent problem of IC and PC assessment in general. Nevertheless, we believe that the study has shown how we might be able to tap into some PC and IC features through semi-direct testing, and it can be achieved even if we don't have access to most advanced technologies, as long as we carefully design those tasks. Yeah. So ultimately, what our study wants to highlight is perhaps the importance of test specifications and task design that enable us to target and elicit in a principled way the construct that we aim to assess. Yeah, it's very basic. It is really fundamental thing, but it's something very important that we shouldn't forget as the part of the thing that cannot be possibly replaced by computers. Yeah, on this note, yeah, we'd like to thank our audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.